Hey guys! So today we are going to be solving multi-step equations that have multiplication next to their variable. I actually this is one of two videos. I made another video that has division with the variable, so if you're struggling on more of those fraction-y problems, go find that video. There are problems like these on your worksheet for today, so I wanted to go over these. We're going to start with some basic problems like number one, one basic problem, and then we're going to kind of progress and I'll show you how these problems are really similar to this basic one, and if you know how to do the basic one, you can catch on to the other ones pretty quickly. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is when we're solving equations is we need to think about opposites. So right now we're doing a lot of multiplication, so the opposite is division. In higher level math like this class, division isn't written like this, except kind of. So this symbol is the same thing as a fraction. For example, if I had 5/4, the two dots are the same thing as the 5 and the 4. So a division symbol is really an extra kind of variable that represents a real fraction. The division that we're going to use looks like fractions a lot. So you're going to be making lines, but you're not going to be drawing this symbol on your paper. Okay, when you solve equations, there are some steps that we need to follow. The first step that we need to follow, let me scooch it up, is steps when solving. Number one, we need to add and subtract first. And then number two, we're going to multiply and divide. All right, so for this first problem, I'm trying to figure out what's happening with my variable. Well, my variable sits right next to my letter, and there's no symbol in between. When you have no symbol between your variable and your letter, this number is called a coefficient. So when there's no symbol in between the coefficient and the variable, then it means multiplication. So these guys right now are getting multiplied. There's no extra numbers on the left-hand side, so we're going to do the opposite of multiply, which is divide. We're trying to get this variable isolated, so we have to do the opposite. And since equations are equal, what we do on one side, we must do on the other side. So we're going to divide each side by -2. Remember, when you divide, you need to take this symbol with you. So if it's a -2 you're dividing, then you need to make sure that you have a -2 that you're dividing off of each side. And then x equals -11. So that means that if you had -2 times -11, that would give you 22. These still look pretty different, the left-hand side and the right-hand side. But if you put this in your calculator, -2 times -11 is 22. So really, this equation is saying the left-hand side is equal to the right-hand side. And that's true for all of these. Like on number 3, this left-hand side looks very different than -41. But these are equal. The left equals the right. They're equations, which means they're equal. Now on number 2, the only difference between number 1 and number 2 is I put this cute little number in the front, number 10. Other than that, it would be the same thing. So normally, or on the last problem, we divide off by 3 first. However, when you're solving, you need to add and subtract first down here at our steps. Okay, so what I ask myself is what's happening with my variable? Well, my variable is attached to this number, and it's attached by multiplication. So the opposite of multiply is divide, but because these guys are attached, I want to move this last because we're not supposed to divide first, we're supposed to add subtract first. Okay, this 10 doesn't have a symbol, and I see that there's a minus here. But this cute little minus is attached to this 3y, and lots of students forget that. But it is. It's attached to the 3y, so we can't take it with us to the other side. Like, we're not going to add 10 because this 10 wouldn't go away. If I added 10 over here, I would get 20, and the idea is that we remove pieces from the y so we can figure out what the y is actually trying to stand for. So since this 10 is positive, the opposite is minus. So I minus 10 from each side because what you do to one side, you must do to the other. Then I drop down my -3y, that hasn't changed yet, and -20 minus 10 is -30. Now, I'm trying to figure out what's happening with my variable and my number. They're sitting right next to each other without a space in between, which means they're getting multiplied. The opposite of multiplication is division. We show division with fraction lines. What we do to one side, we do to the other, and the way we undo this multiply is divide. So now we have y equals 10. There's nothing else left by our variable on the left-hand side, so that is our answer. Okay, now in number 3, it's very similar to number 2, but I just put an extra number. Look, there's 2 numbers here and only 1 number up here. Okay, so we again are going to save this variable and this number till the end because these guys are getting multiplied. But these are all adding or subtracting, and we need to add and subtract first because that is our step. These two are like terms because they both don't have a variable. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to combine these guys. I keep my negative 7y, and negative 5 minus 8 is negative 13. And that equals negative 41. If you weren't sure, you can always use your calculator. It's not a big deal. So you would do negative 5 minus 8. Now, if you get an error on this, sometimes students get errors and they use the negative sign instead of a minus sign. So just be careful with that. Okay, now this problem looks a lot like number 2. We save the variable and its coefficient, so the number in front, the variable, and the number to the very end. We need to move this number to the opposite side. Since it's subtracting by my variable, we need to the opposite, so we're going to add 13 to both sides. Because what we do to one side, we must do to the other side. These 13s make 0, so they cancel. I need to bring down this guy, which is negative 7y. Negative 41 plus 13 is negative 28. Okay, now we need to get the y by itself. We can multiply, divide. We're on that step. So since this negative 7 and this y are getting multiplied, we're going to do the opposite. So we're going to divide each side by negative 7 because what we do on one side, we do to the other. Negative 28 divided by negative 7 is positive 4. Now, on this last problem, the only thing that I did is I added another variable. So on number 3, to go from 3 to 4, I just put another variable in there. But the main thing we need to do is combine like terms. If you combine like terms first, then it'll end up looking like this problem, which ended up looking like this problem, which ended up looking like this problem. Okay, so if we combine like terms, they'll all go back to this basic problem that we had. Okay, so my like terms are anything that has the same exact variable or numbers that don't have letters next to them at all. So this negative 6x and this positive 5y are like terms. If we combine these together, negative 6 plus 5 is negative 1x. And you don't have to put the 1 in front of it, you can just leave it as negative x. These guys are the same thing. Okay, we still have this negative 18 in front, negative 3, and negative 29. Well, now this problem, like I said, looks a lot like this guy, right? I had my 2 numbers here. So we're going to combine these two. We're going to combine the like terms that are 18 and negative 3. So it's negative 18 and negative 3 that we're going to combine together. And negative 18 minus 3 is negative 21, I believe. Yes, I just want to make sure. Negative 21. Okay, so we combine these two numbers, and then we have minus x equals negative 29. So now this problem looks a lot like number 2. Okay, then we need to look at our variable. So our variable is this guy right here. My negative 21 is getting added or subtracted to my negative x, and that will give me negative 29. Since my negative 21 is getting added and subtracted, I want to do that first rather than dealing with the negative in front of the x. So we're going to get rid of this negative 21 by doing the opposite. What we do to one side of the equation, we must do to the other side of the equation. Got to keep it balanced. We have negative x equals negative 29 plus 21, which is negative 8. Okay, Our last step that we're going to do is we are going to divide by that x, or the number in front of the x. So the number sitting in front of our x is really a -1, and these guys are getting multiplied together. Remember, the opposite of multiply is divide, so we're going to get rid of the negative in front of the x because we can't leave it there by dividing the negative on both sides. That means that x equals 8. This is your final answer. If you have any questions, please let your teacher know. Make sure you try your practice problems, and good luck. Have a great day, guys. Bye.